All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crowdfunding for Audio Drama, a presentation on, you guessed it, crowdfunding for audio drama. Now, first, I figure you should know a little bit about me, the person giving this presentation. I have made too many audio dramas, but most relevantly, I have crowdfunded approximately 6 of them, including Side Questing, Someone Dies in This Elevator, What Will Be Here, and Regarding Dracula. And we're going to be going over all aspects of audio drama crowdfunding in a way that I hope will be accessible to beginners, people who have never crowdfunded before, but also not super boring for people who have crowdfunded before. If you have questions as I'm going through, feel free to drop them in the chat. I will be able to see them. We'll have some time for questions at the end, but if you have something like quick and easy while I'm on a slide, just chuck it right in there. So the first question that we have about crowdfunding is, well, okay, why? Why do it? There's a lot of reasons. Crowdfunding allows you to gauge interest in your audio drama, see how many people are excited for what you're making. It allows you to pay your cast and crew, and also yourself. That's a really important part of it. You can cover your production expenses, as well as you can show the quote-unquote hidden cost of audio drama. I think most people don't know just how expensive it is to make audio drama because a lot of showrunners cover costs out of their own pocket. And the more that audio drama as a whole reveals just how much it costs to make audio drama, the more standardized it will be to support those audio dramas and not just assume, oh, because I get this thing for free, it must be free to make. And in that aspect of covering your production expenses, it makes your art sustainable. It allows you to keep doing it instead of worrying about how you're going to fund it. And lastly, I like crowdfunding because it's a one-time thing. You fund your season, sometimes your whole show, once, and then you don't have to worry about it again. Whereas with something like Patreon, you're kind of always worrying about it, and it takes consistent effort across time. But all of that being said, it is so important to remember that crowdfunding isn't free money. It is hard work. Just you deciding, hey, all right, I'm going to make a crowdfunding campaign for my audio drama doesn't guarantee that you're actually going to get money. And now, how should you know if you should crowdfund? This isn't necessarily hard and fast rules, just things you should consider. The first thing is if you have an existing audience or following, that will be really helpful in your crowdfund. Like this could be, a lot of followers on social media, or you're known within your community or a specific niche, or you just have existing audience from another podcast or network or other show. So for example, my very first crowdfunding campaign was for Side Questing. And later on, I did Someone Dies in This Elevator. And people who were familiar with my work on Side Questing knew that they could expect a similar quality of work in Someone Dies in This Elevator. And therefore, it was a little bit easier for me to pitch that crowdfund because I didn't have to also convince them, hey, this audio drama is going to be good, because I've already made one that was good. If you don't have an existing audience, that doesn't mean you shouldn't crowdfund. You just have to have a plan to build one. You have to have a plan to get the word out about your crowdfunding campaign. And lastly, you should crowdfund if you're willing to put in the time to not just create a crowdfunding campaign, but also run it. It will not work if you make a really awesome crowdfunding campaign with really rad perks and it just sits there on Kickstarter. No one's gonna find it. The bulk of the effort for crowdfunding happens while your crowdfunding campaign is live, is happening. So the next question I feel like I usually get when people are crowdfunding is, where should I fund it? And the answer is it depends, which is not the most helpful. You've got a lot of options. Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Seed and Spark, iFundWoman, Crowdfunder, Ko-Fi or Ko-fi, and this isn't even everything. We're going to get a little more into depth on Kickstarter and Indiegogo because these seem to be the most common platforms used for audio drama. Seed and Spark is probably number 3, and Crowdfunder is probably number 4. Personally, and I'll explain this reasoning in a little bit, this is a little foreshadowing for you. I think that if you want to do a fixed funding, you should do Kickstarter. And if you want to do a flexible funding campaign, you should consider Indiegogo or Crowdfunder. Personally, I had some really great experiences with Seed and Spark, and then a good friend of mine, Tanya Ransom, funded Afflicted on Seed and Spark and had a lot of issues, and they were very unhelpful. So I don't know if Seed and Spark management has changed in the past couple of years, but I feel like I can't recommend it now, even though it worked well for me in the past. And now, I mentioned fixed versus flexible funding kind of as a throwaway, and let's explain what that means. So, fixed funding is you have to hit your goal to keep the money. Every single campaign on Kickstarter is fixed funding. If you hit 50% and your campaign ends, you get $0. Flexible funding is you get to keep what you raise. So if you do flexible funding and you hit 50%, you get to keep 50% because that's what you raised. I suggest that if you're going to be making your audio drama, no matter what, if you hit your goal, if you don't hit your goal, you should use flexible funding. Because if you used fixed funding and you end up in a situation where you hit, say, 75% of your goal, you're going to get $0. And instead of making your audio drama with a smaller budget, you're now making that audio drama with no budget. So that's why flexible funding is great. It's a little less stressful because if you don't hit your goal, it allows you to sort of reevaluate your show and your budget and make it work on a smaller goal instead of no goal. If you're using flexible funding, I recommend setting a goal that matches your ideal budget. And this is so that the audience knows what it costs to make your show. And we'll have some examples of this coming up. And if you're doing flexible funding, you should have a plan in place for what happens if you don't reach your goal. This could be shorter episodes, a smaller season, less sound design. It could also be pay people less, but I really recommend as a showrunner that you have a plan to lower the scope of your audio drama instead of simply asking people to do the same amount of work for less money. An example of lowering the scope would be shorter episodes, less episodes, cutting some of the really heavy sound design scenes. There's a lot of different options. You don't have to, but that's my suggestion. And now, if you're only going to make the show if you hit your goal, you should use fixed funding, and I think that means you should use Kickstarter. If you're using fixed funding, you should set a goal that you think you can reach, but that will cover all production costs. As you can imagine, if you only keep the money if you hit your goal, it's really important to think about what that goal is. So for Dracula, or regarding Dracula, we picked a specific goal that we knew, okay, we can pay everyone if we hit this goal, and if we don't hit this goal, we're not doing the show. And we also had a plan for if we make more money than our goal, here's what we're going to do with it. For example, bonus episodes and a concept album. You can use stretch goals for both versions of funding. You can do flexible funding with your ideal budget and say, hey, if we blow this goal out of the water and we hit, $5,000 more, you're going to get like a awesome Christmas special or something. just because you're doing flexible funding doesn't mean you can't do stretch goals. And I think in general, it's really good to have stretch goals. You get to look at this chart while I take some water. All right. So I said earlier that most audio drama campaigns use Indiegogo or Kickstarter. This data, at the top it says, from 2011 to 2023, 370 audio fiction projects crowdfunded, and 53% of them reached their goal or beyond it. Now, if of those projects, the ones that funded on Indiegogo, 34% of them hit their goal. The ones that funded on Kickstarter, 64% of them reached their goal. This is why I say, if you're doing an all or nothing campaign, do it on Kickstarter. There's a lot of brand recognition behind the Kickstarter name that helps you, and just looking at the data, generally they're a little more successful. I've learned that people are a lot more willing to support an audio drama campaign if they know that audio drama is only happening if the campaign is successful. Because if you think about it from the perspective of, I don't know, an audio drama fan looking around deciding where to put their money, if their options are audio drama that's going to happen regardless, or audio drama that's only going to happen if they get funded, chances are they'll probably support the one that needs support to happen. Unless, of course, you know, they're only excited about the one that's happening anyway. It's not all or nothing. There's no one aspect that guarantees a successful crowdfunding campaign. Also, shout out to Brad Colebrook, who made this graphic that I stole. Water break. All right. So the next question after where do I crowdfund is how much? How much do I ask for? Your goal should match the cost of production for fixed funding or for flexible funding. If the cost of production is too high and you think there's no way this will hit its goal, it's often better to just scale back. You'll see sort of a constant across this presentation. I love paying people, and I am generally pro paying people. And I think if your options are making a smaller season or paying people less, you shouldn't pay people less. That's capitalistic nonsense. I'm trying very hard not to swear. When you create your goal, you also need to factor in platform fees, reward costs, and shipping. This last one especially is really easy to forget. Usually platforms take about 5% of everything you raise. So you should decide your goal, take 5% of it, and add it back on. And you should also be aware of what your rewards cost to make, because that's money that can't go to your audio drama. And showrunners, you should pay yourself too. Here's some examples of goals from different campaigns. Side questing, season 2 and 3. My goals were 800 and 2,000. These two should have been higher, because guess what? I didn't really pay myself. Someone dies in this elevator. For both seasons, I did a flexible campaign where I said, in an ideal world, this is how much I want to pay people. And we raised, I don't know, 5K and 6K for each seasons. And I was really happy with that, because that, to me, was a pretty fair rate for people. But I wanted to see, okay, well, if we were doing like industry standard rates, what would people get? For What Will Be Here, we had a 4K goal, and I raised a little bit more, and it worked out really nicely. Re Dracula was crazy. We had a goal of 12K, and we raised more than double it. But I don't want to just do data from my campaigns. Here is data from 540 campaigns. The average goal was 7,500 across all platforms. If we just look at the campaigns on Indiegogo, you'll see the goal was a little less. Campaigns only on Kickstarter, a little bit more. Campaigns on neither of them, even higher. The goal was 7,500. Funds pledged were about 5,300. And you can see the breakdown again. Indiegogo got less funds pledged. Kickstarter got more. It's a little different if we look at all the other platforms. But I think this gives you sort of a good idea of the ballpark of kind of where we're at for the average campaign. If you aren't Unseen or the Magnus Archives or apparently regarding Dracula, this is a good basis to sort of think about what you could potentially raise. You don't have to stop here, but this can be a good start. I also want to point out that average is not median. This is average. Here's some other data for median. I stole this from Brad again. They said it was okay. So if we look at the median instead of the average, it's less money because we have to keep in mind that there are occasionally crowdfunding campaigns that buck wild, like kick it out of the park. And now we've talked about, okay, well, what platform should I use? What should my goal be? Usually the next question is, when? And the answer is kind of whenever, but probably not December. People don't really tend to be focused on supporting art in December. People tend to be focused on holiday spending and gift giving in December. Late summer is really popular, but if you're a horror show, fall is really popular. On average, the campaigns run about 30 days. Some platforms will let you extend it, such as Indiegogo or iFundWomen. Other platforms like Kickstarter will not allow you to extend it. There's absolutely no correlation between campaign length and success. No matter how long you run it, you'll get a lot of support at the beginning, a lot of support at the end, and a plateau in the middle. The longer your campaign is, the longer that plateau is. Here's a breakdown of campaign length. It's mostly 30, sometimes more, sometimes less. This is a breakdown of, at the top, successful campaigns by end date, and at the bottom, all campaigns by end date. And again, it kind of doesn't really matter what month you do it. Just whatever works for you. And now, branching off of, okay, well, where and when and how much should it be? The next question is, okay, well, how much of the show should be finished before I start crowdfunding? My answer for you, number one, enough to share a proof of concept. This could be a trailer. This could be a pilot episode. Basically, what you need is something that people can listen to and get a feel for the project. The audio doesn't need to be the final audio. For example, I know a show that made a trailer that didn't include the final voice actors. They were just the showrunner's friends. But that trailer still let people get a feel for the show. If you're going that route of non-final audio, you should just make sure that it will match the tone and production level of the show. Don't sink a bunch of money into making a really professional, awesome trailer if the rest of your show isn't going to sound like that. Generally, shows funding like a second or later season or shows being produced by a known podcaster will do better in crowdfunding because people know they do good work. Their pitch of, give me money to get this audio drama, is easier because the people receiving that pitch already know that, okay, there's probably going to be good sound design. The audio quality is going to be good. The writing's going to be fun. They know a little bit of what to expect. Beyond having enough of your show finished for a proof of concept, you should have enough of your show finished to know production costs, because that's going to be what your goal is. And sort of obviously, you need to know your goal to crowdfund. Beyond that, you should know enough to make images and graphics. I really recommend creating a visual identity for your show. Having good art will help your campaign succeed because people want to share art they think is cool. I bet when you looked at this slide, maybe you read the title, you saw all those words, and you looked at the images that I stuck right here. It's the same thing with crowdfunding. You make a post, cool image, hey, support my crowdfund. People will look at that cool image and then see, oh, there's a crowdfund. If you just have a post that says, hey, give me money, it's just words, and people love scrolling past words. And lastly, you should have enough of your show finished to get people excited about it. You are pitching this project to every single person who visits your crowdfunding campaign. You should be able to have enough specifics about your project for people to think it's cool. I have seen crowdfunds, I will not name them, of people basically just being like, hi, I have an idea for an audio drama. You should give me money so I can figure out my idea for an audio drama. And it's kind of like, I look at that and I go, well, what are you making? And then I don't give them money. So basically, like, you're making a pitch. You wouldn't walk into a room of studio executives and be like, hi, give me money for an audio drama, please. You would be like, here's the show. Here's what's awesome about it. Here, listen to the trailer. Aren't you excited? Don't you want this to happen? Give me money. Doing that increases your odds of being given money. The next question I get, what should be on the crowdfunding campaign? Like that first page that you visit. A pitch for your podcast. Information about the show. Who would like the show? How many episodes is it going to be? When do you think people can listen? Link your website if you have a website. You should also say that it's an audio drama. This gets overlooked a lot, and I kind of understand why. Because you are an audio drama creator, pitching your show to audio drama fans. But what if someone who doesn't know your work, doesn't know this crowdfund, comes across it on a Kickstarter page, and they're like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. But what is it like? Is it a book? Are they doing a short film? Saying it's an audio drama is really important. Your pitch should be the first thing on the page. It should be the first thing people see. Because, like, if you were talking to someone and you were going to be like, hey, I'm doing this cool project, give me money, you wouldn't start by saying, so I'm working on a thing, and it's got these people cast in it, and if you support me, here's, like, some perks that you're going to get, and, like, here's our funding breakdown. No, you're going to be like, I'm making Regarding Dracula. It's an audio adaptation of Dracula, and we're going to sound design it, and it's going to be scary, and we got Kareem as Dracula. Like, do the things that get people excited right at the beginning. The other sort of right at the beginning thing is a crowdfunding video. Most crowdfunding sites put that video right smack dab on the top of the page. This is the great place for your audio proof of concept. take your audio, sprinkle in some visuals, boom, top of the crowdfunding campaign. In this video, you can also do like a talking head, a film of you being like, hey, here's why you should give me money. That's helpful too. But I think the best use for a crowdfunding video, audio proof of concept. Beyond that, things like cast and crew info, perk and reward info, other ways to help. You can include text that people can copy and paste to share to social media. Make it really easy for people to share your campaign. The easier it is to share your campaign, the more likely people are going to share your campaign. And lastly, I think it's really good to have a breakdown of where the funds are going. I, as a audio drama producer, voice actor, sound designer, if I see a crowdfunding page that is paying their actors 75% of what they raise and their sound designer a measly 10% of what they raise, I'm not supporting that crowdfund because I, as a sound designer, do not like to see that. So having a breakdown of like, hey, if you trust me with your money, this is how it's going to be spent, is really good. It's just like an open and honest way of being accountable. And lastly, those really cool visuals that you make should also be on your crowdfunding campaign. Here are some example budget breakdowns for you to look at while I drink water. You'll note that the side questing one, which is bottom left, starting to look a little bit like a Pac-Man. That's not good. I should have paid myself for sound design, which would have made this look not like a Pac-Man. But also, as you can see, the budget breakdown for each show is a little different. That's okay. There's no like 25% to actors, 25% to sound design. Like, there's no specific breakdown that you need to hit. At the end of the day, you should look at your budget and think that it's fair for everyone involved, including you. I touched a little bit on crowdfunding video. I'm going to gloss over this a little bit because we're running out of time. Your crowdfunding video should be short. Most people aren't going to watch the whole thing. It should have interesting visuals. This can be a waveform, but it'll look better if it's not. Have an audio clip. Have a call to action to support the campaign. You should be able to tell people why they should pledge to the crowdfund. If you don't have an answer to the question of why should I support you, you're going to have a really hard time crowdfunding. And I guess this is kind of self-promo, but I really like the video we made for Regarding Dracula. It's on YouTube, Re-Dracula trailer. You can check it out if you want to. No, we're not playing it. The next question. All right, I know my video, I know my page. What perks should I offer? Digital perks are wonderful. You don't need to ship them. And they can be simple. They can be name a character, be thanked in credits, get bloopers or bonus audio, get annotated scripts. If you do digital perks, you should have a plan for how to send them. Are you going to email them? You're going to stick them all in a Google Drive? Is it going to be more complicated than that? Like, there's no one right way. You should just know what you want. Physical perks are cool. I love a sticker. Stickers and postcards are great physical perks because they're flat and you can mail them easily. I recommend not spending a lot of money on rewards. Spend a lot of money on your audio drama. And for every single physical perk you put, you should have a plan for how to ship them. It can be really great to match the theme of your podcast. For Regarding Dracula, one of our perks was you get a friendship bracelet from Jonathan Harker. That was so fun. I was so amused by it, and a lot of people liked it, and a lot of people supported to get that, like, themed perk. Usually, people support audio drama crowdfunding campaigns not for their perks, but because they like the show, want to support the people involved. So if you're really stressing about perks, don't worry too much. People are usually supporting for the end product. But I've found that perks can encourage people to jump up a tier and give you a little more money. Here are some examples that we did for Regarding Dracula. The entire audiobook, access to exclusive Discord channels, bonus audio, digital calendar, social media shoutout, a zine, stickers, postcards, a digital tabletop RPG bundle, a t-shirt. That was a pain to ship, and I'm never doing that again. A friendship bracelet, and a thank you in the show audio. We did our thank yous, I believe, in the very last episode, but you don't have to do that. What amount should your tiers be? I recommend having a low tier and a high tier, and then some in between. Physical perks should generally cost more than digital perks. And you can see some of the example tiers from Regarding Dracula, but I'm not going to really give you a long time to look at them. Here are some example tiers from What Will Be Here. I had too many tiers for What Will Be Here, and I would have cut 3 of them in hindsight. Like doing 5, 10, 15, 25, 30, that's 5 tiers, and the top one is only $30. So having more space between your tiers is good, because I found that if you have 2 tiers pretty close to each other, sometimes people just drop to the lower one. On average, across a bunch of campaigns, $35 to $37 is the most common pledge amount, but not by much. This is a histogram. And lastly, I rushed a little bit through how to price your tiers because we're getting to the important part. How do you promote your crowdfund? Tell literally every single person you know. Post on social media all the time, every day. Use images. Link to your campaign page. Message your friends and family. Email podcast newsletters. Cross-promote with other audio dramas. Your proof of concept audio trailer, great for feed swaps. You could have a live stream event. You could do a giveaway. Create milestones and then celebrate reaching them. People love to celebrate reaching milestones. And I said it before, but I will say it again. Make graphics. I find that visuals do a better job of communicating what the show is about than paragraphs of text, because people just scroll past the paragraphs of texts. But images are fun. They're pretty. You can get a vibe from an image so fast. And unlike an audio clip where someone has to press play, listen to the audio, visuals, they see it. They get the vibe immediately. Graphics are so important that I have more examples. Here are some graphics from What Will Be Here. You can kind of get the vibe. Space, future. Maybe things are a little distorted. Could this be a dystopian future? But there's a lot of rockets. That's cool. I don't know. And you can see within this that there's some celebrating of milestones going on. 45% funded, 10% to the green light, etc., etc. More graphics. Someone dies in the elevator. Maybe this is a horror show. But also maybe it's a little quirky. Both are correct. More graphics. From side questing. Maybe this is a cute fantasy. People like me, who love a cute fantasy, can look at this and go, I bet that's a cute fantasy. You catch their interest, they go to the crowdfunding campaign. Maybe they listen to your trailer. Maybe they're like, oh, this is adorable. Maybe they then go and support. I have found in my work that an image with like vibes works so much better than trying to explain it in words. This is a lighthearted fantasy podcast. It's queer. It's cute. Come give me money. Like, it just works better to put cute things there. Question from the chat. How do you find graphic designers? I don't know, because I just do it myself in Canva. Yeah, that's probably not helpful, but I taught myself graphic design by going to Canva and messing around. And it worked out great. Okay, we're almost done. We'll have time for questions yet. How do you promote? You gotta do it. The most common mistake I see in audio drama crowdfunding campaigns is people make their page, they post about it once, no one sees the post, no one knows they're crowdfunding, and then they get really bitter and sad. It's important to remember that people don't owe you their money or their attention. You really gotta pitch it to them. At its core, crowdfunding is a numbers game. The more people that visit your page equals more people supporting your page. Having a cohesive visual or brand identity will help you a lot, because the more put together and professional your production seems, the more people will be willing to support it. A sort of slapdash thrown together crowdfund indicates that the production will also be slapdash and thrown together. If I see a bad crowdfunding campaign, I assume the audio drama is also going to be bad. And that's not necessarily true, but more often than not, it is. And that's really sad. And lastly, you really should know your audience and appeal directly to them. You should be able to answer, who is this project for? You should also be able to answer, why should I support you? Promote your project. Where are your audiences? The Read Dracula audience? They're on Tumblr. I did most of my posts on Tumblr. But also, your audience is probably on podcast apps if they're listening to podcasts. So promoting your crowdfund through other podcasts can be great. Where do we go from here? Look at crowdfunding campaigns. See what you like. See what you don't like. Look at other crowdfunding campaigns. See what you like. See what you don't like. Engage your audience as it currently exists and market your show. Because more people following your work means more people will follow your crowdfund. Build hype before your campaign goes live. And lastly, how do I take care of myself while crowdfunding? Because, turns out, it's really hard to take care of yourself while you're crowdfunding. It's exhausting. It's depressing. We all hate capitalism here, but you really hate capitalism when you're crowdfunding. So my answer for you, do as much as you can in advance. Make your graphics, write your copy, schedule those social media posts. Consider not making your audio drama while you're crowdfunding your audio drama. Maybe you just gotta take my word on this. I've done it both ways. It's way better if you're doing one job at a time. And take breaks. You don't need to be online all the time. It can really feel like you need to be online all the time, but trust me, you don't. Go touch grass. And lastly, capitalism sucks. We are in late-stage capitalism like we've never seen it before. Remember that you're more than the dollar amount you raise. The art you create should not be valued by the money that you get for it. You can absolutely fail a crowdfunding campaign and make a really awesome show. And yeah, it will suck not getting money, but please don't think that just because you ended up not doing a good crowdfund, that doesn't mean you're not going to do a good show. Also, like, it's never a good time to crowdfund. There is always a crisis, always an emergency, and there's never a good time. So just do it when you wanna and see how it goes. And that's it. We have 5 minutes for questions. I was worried we wouldn't have any time for questions. Thank you for joining me. I hope you also enjoy the little image I made in Canva. You can find me at talminear.com. You can find me on Blue Sky and Tumblr at Starplanes. And if you want, like, personalized advice for your audio drama, your crowdfunding campaign, stuff that fits outside of a 30-minute presentation, you can hire me. I do consulting. The information is on my website. Our first question is, are you hireable as a graphic designer? Yes. And if so, what rates? I don't know, but my website has a contact form and you should contact me. Any advice on building hype or an audience before a crowdfunding campaign? Man, just post a lot. Like, if your show exists, then you already have an audience. Start doing teasers for the next season. Start being like, oh, we're going to crowdfund soon. Keep an eye. Here's a little graphic. Here's a one sentence from the script. What do you think is going to happen? Here's a Tumblr poll of 5 potential things that could be happening next season. Do you want to vote? Yeah, post art. Be silly. Most of my marketing these days is done on Tumblr, which is a very silly website. So if you're on Tumblr, my advice is to be silly. How much time do you spend preparing a campaign before launching it? A month minimum. Usually not more than 3 months, but I try to spend a month making graphics, making the campaign page, sending the campaign page to friends, being like, do you see any typos? Stuff like that. If I do it too much in advance, I forget what I've done, and that's not very helpful. How much is too much when you're posting about the campaign? Seems like there's a fine line between getting the word out and being spammy. Absolutely correct. There is no easy answer to this. I recommend posting once every day about the campaign. If you have special events like, hey, we hit a milestone, or hey, we're doing a live stream, post that again. This is also why I like graphics, because if you do it right, sometimes just looking at the graphic is pleasant. Like, people enjoy seeing art for shows. So if you do 2 posts and they have 2 graphics that are different, it's different than 2 identical posts, if that makes any sense. Don't use bots. Don't tag, don't bulk tag people. Really, I just recommend thinking, okay, hey, if I was someone following this account, would this annoy me? And if the answer is yes, don't do it. If the answer is no, do it. I know that Blue Sky is a little bit better about their algorithm than, say, Twitter. Posting on Twitter, you have no idea who's going to see that. Posting on Blue Sky, it's a chronological feed. Beautiful. People are probably going to see it. So knowing the platform and how the platform works should also go into your calculation about what is spammy. Okay. one question, and if someone wants to sneak one more in, we'll do that. And then I'm bailing. How many episodes should you make and release before crowdfunding? That's a great question. I usually do 1 or 0. Either I'm making a pilot episode or I'm making a trailer. Sometimes I'll have the whole season written before crowdfunding, but then I won't record and do post-production until after. One time I made the entire season, someone dies in this elevator, and then crowdfunded. And that was kind of nice because everyone who supported the campaign, right when it closed, I could be like, here's all the episodes ad-free, instead of waiting around. But I sort of regret doing it that way because it was a lot of telling people, hey, I don't know how much I can pay you, but it'll be something. And in hindsight, I'm not so happy with that. Which isn't to say it's a bad way to do it. It's just, I've decided I don't really like doing it that way, if that makes any sense at all. Okay. I think that's all the questions. And we're only 3 minutes over. Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining me and letting me talk about crowdfunding for 47 straight minutes. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had a lot of fun. And I hope you learned something. All right. Bye.